He snatched her passport mid-step. Gate 9. Lax. Saturday afternoon. Hundreds of people. Nobody moved. She looked down at her empty hand, then up at him. She didn't scream. She didn't run. She started counting exits. 15 feet away, a man in a charcoal suit slowly reached up and removed his sunglasses. He didn't look at her. He looked at the man holding the passport. That man took one step back.
New city.
Just one.
New flight path.
She had been careful for 6 months. New name. New city. New flight path. Someone talked. And now the only document that could get her out of the country was in the wrong hands. The boss didn't come alone. But here's what nobody in that terminal understood. Neither did she. What she had on her phone made that passport worthless anyway. Don't look away. Because the moment he snatched that passport, the trap had already been sprung. The line at immigration was 40 people long, and I was the only one standing still. Everyone else was moving, shuffling forward with their rolling luggage, checking their phones, adjusting their carry-ons, and I was standing in the middle of Terminal 3 at Incheon International Airport with nothing in my hands, watching Kwon Ho walk away. He had my passport. He'd taken it the way he took everything, efficiently, without warning, while I was looking at something else. He'd been standing right next to me in the line, close enough that I could smell his cologne, and then he'd said something about my boarding pass, asked to see it, and I'd pulled both documents from my bag without thinking because that's what 2 years does to a person. It creates a reflex of compliance, so deep you're handing things over before you've decided to. Kwon Ho. My voice came out too quiet. The airport swallowed it. He was already 6 people ahead in the line. He'd been behind me, and now he was in front because he'd slipped ahead while I was registering what had happened. He had my passport in his jacket pocket, and he wasn't looking back. Kwon Ho. Louder. A woman with a child glanced at me. He didn't turn. I started forward, trying to get to him, and the man behind me said something about the line, and I said sorry and pushed through anyway. Excuse me, sorry, I need to. And I got close enough to touch his shoulder, and he finally turned and smiled at me. He was very good at smiling. You are not leaving, he said pleasantly. Like a statement of fact. Like weather. Give me my passport. You leave, you violate the terms, he said. I explained this. The apartment is in my name. The visa is tied to my sponsorship. You leave Korea. You leave everything. This was true. He had engineered it to be true over 18 months, so quietly, so incrementally, that I hadn't understood what was being constructed until the architecture was already finished. Give me my passport, I said again, because it was all I had. Lower your voice, he said, still smiling. You're embarrassing yourself. I looked around. The immigration line, the departure hall, the anonymous crowd of a Saturday morning at one of the busiest airports in Asia. People were not watching. People were performing the specifically Korean version of public non-involvement, aware of everything, visibly engaged with nothing. I had no phone. He'd taken that 3 days ago. Technically, I'd given it to him for repair, and he hadn't returned it. I had $40 in a currency I couldn't spend here. I had a boarding pass for a flight to Manila departing in 90 minutes. I had nothing else. Please, I said. The word cost me something. Please just give it back. When you're ready to discuss the terms, he said, call me. He patted his jacket pocket. You know where it is. He turned back toward the line. Dismissal complete. I stood in the middle of Terminal 3 and breathed. I felt the specific quality of helplessness that is different from fear. Fear is urgent, kinetic, it wants to run or fight. Helplessness is heavier. It sits in the chest like water and makes everything slow. Excuse me. The voice came from my left. A man was standing outside the line, not in it, beside it, with the ease of someone who hadn't been in it at all. He was wearing dark trousers and a fitted white shirt, no tie, sunglasses pushed up on his head, holding a coffee from an airport vendor. He was looking at me. That man took something from you, he said. Not a question. My passport, I said. He looked past me to where Kwon Ho was advancing in the line. He looked at Kwon Ho for a long moment with an expression that organized itself into something I couldn't name. Not anger, not pity, something more considered than either. Then he reached up and removed his sunglasses from his head. He held the arm between two fingers, folded them closed with one hand, slowly, precisely, and put them in his shirt pocket. He took out his phone. He made a call. It lasted 40 seconds. He spoke in Korean I could mostly follow, a name, a terminal number, immigration queue now. He lowered the phone and looked at me. "What airline?" he said. "What?" "Your flight." "What airline?" "Philippine Airlines." "But he has."
"Come with me," he said.
"I don't know you," I said. "I can't just." "Your flight leaves in 87 minutes, he said. "You have no phone, no way to contact anyone, and the man with your passport is 30 feet away and moving toward the checkpoint." He held my gaze. "You can stand here and calculate the risk of coming with me. Or you can come." I came that if you've ever stood somewhere feeling completely powerless and just wished once that someone would step in, you know exactly what I felt in that terminal.
Hit like.
"We're just getting started." He walked at a pace that required me to keep up, which I did, following him through the departure hall, away from the immigration line, toward a set of doors I hadn't noticed, staff corridor, badge access, which he pushed through without slowing because the door opened for him before he reached it, which meant someone on the other side was watching. Inside, a narrow hallway, airport-issued lighting, functional. A man in civilian clothes was already there, young, broad, with the organized attentiveness of someone whose job is to be useful quickly. "Choi," the man beside me said. He gave a name I recognized as Kwon Ho's full name, the immigration line designation, and a description. 3 sentences. Choi nodded and left. "Sit," the man said, gesturing to a bench along the wall. I sat. My legs were grateful.
"I'm Yoon Se-in," he said.
He didn't offer his hand. He crouched down to be eye level with me, which was unexpected, which was somehow the most disarming thing that had happened in the last 10 minutes. "You're not from Korea originally." "Philippines," I said. "I'm trying to get home." I've been trying to leave for 3 months." He was looking at me with those still, attending eyes. Dark, not unkind. "He controls your visa," he said. "And the apartment. And my Korean bank account, which has my savings in it because he convinced me. He said it was for tax purposes." I stopped, because hearing it out loud, in the condensed summary of it, was newly humiliating in a different way than living it had been. Living it had been gradual. Saying it was sudden. "You don't need to explain," he said. "I'm explaining so you understand why I can't just." "I understand," he said. "You built a life here, and he made himself necessary to every part of it." The accuracy of it, from a stranger, in 40 words, stopped me completely. "Yes," I said. He stood. He looked at his phone. "Your passport will be with you in 10 minutes, he said. "There are some other things that will take longer. The bank account, days, not weeks. The visa status," he paused. "I need to make some calls. That's also not today's problem. Today's problem is getting you on the plane." "You can get my passport back," I said. "In 10 minutes. 8 now," he said. I stared at him. "Who are you?" I said. He looked at me with an expression that was not evasion and not performance. "Someone who knows how airports work," he said. "And who is currently making that work for you." 7 minutes later, Choi returned. He was carrying my passport. I didn't make the flight. Not because Kwon Ho stopped me. By the time I had my passport back, Kwon Ho was being detained at the immigration checkpoint for a document irregularity that Choi had communicated to someone who had communicated it to someone else. And I would later understand this chain, but in the moment I simply knew that he was occupied, and I had my passport and $80 that Se-in had handed me in the corridor without explanation, and I should have made it. But I stood at the gate with my boarding pass and my return passport and the specific paralysis of someone who has been in crisis management mode for 10 minutes and has now run out of immediate crisis, and the gate agent called final boarding twice, and I stood there. I missed the flight. I sat down in the departure gate and stared at the empty jet bridge and thought, I've been trying to leave for 3 months, and I stood at the gate and didn't move. My phone appeared on the seat beside me. I looked up.
Se-in.
He'd found me somehow. Gate number, I assumed, from the boarding pass he'd seen. "That's not mine," I said. "Mine is with him." "It's a temporary phone," he said. "My number is saved. The airline will rebook you." I've arranged it. I looked at the phone, then at him. You arranged my rebooking? I said flatly. The next direct flight is tomorrow morning, he said. I've arranged a hotel. It's near the airport, it's clean, and it's not connected to anything Kwan Ho can trace. You're very, I searched for the word, prepared. I don't like half-finished things, he said.
He sat down beside me.
Not close, the seat won over, that precise, respectful distance. He looked at the gate, at the empty space where a plane had been. You didn't board, he said. I know.
Why?
I looked at my hands,
at the passport in them.
I don't know, I said. I've been building up to this day, for 3 months. I had everything, I got everything back, and I stood there and… You've been in survival mode, he said. For a long time. Survival mode doesn't end because the immediate threat resolves. It takes time to believe the door is actually open. I looked at him, at the profile of him, looking at the gate. That's very specific knowledge, I said. I've seen it before. In your line of work. In people I've been close to, he said quietly. I held the passport, the blue cover of it, the gold seal. I have a sister in Manila, I said. She doesn't know how bad it got. I kept telling her I was fine. Will you tell her now? I thought about my sister's voice, about the specific texture of being known by someone who knew you before you became this, before you became someone who handed over her passport without thinking, who built a bank account in someone else's effective control. I'll have to, I said. When she sees me. He nodded once. The hotel is booked under a different name, he said. A company name. Nothing traceable. Kwan Ho's detention is temporary. He'll be released tonight. He won't find you. How do you know? Because I'll know if he leaves the checkpoint vicinity, he said simply. I looked at him, at the complete normalcy with which he'd said this, like the monitoring of a man's movements was a reasonable thing to be capable of on a Saturday morning. Who are you? I said. Again, meaning it differently this time.
He turned to look at me.
He had the kind of face that's hard to read not because it hides things but because it places things, everything deliberate, nothing wasted.
Someone who can help, he said.
If you want help. With a bank account. With everything. I looked at the empty gate. At the city visible through the terminal windows, gray and immense. Seoul, on a November morning. I'm leaving tomorrow, I said. Yes. So, why does any of this matter? After tomorrow, it's over. He was quiet for a moment. Because it's not over, he said. The account is still there. The visa documentation he controls could still be used against you. If you ever try to return to Korea, for any reason, he paused. Half-finished things become problems later.
I thought about that.
And you finish things, I said. When I start them, he said.
Subscribe.
Because what I'm about to tell you, what I found in that hotel room the next morning, proved the situation was bigger than one man at an airport. And that I was already in the middle of something I didn't fully understand. The hotel was exactly what he'd said, clean, anonymous, close. The room had a view of a highway overpass, which was fine. I didn't need a view. I called my sister. I told her I was coming home. I told her some of it, not all, not yet, and she cried in the specific way of someone who has been waiting to receive news they'd already suspected, and I cried too, sitting on the edge of a hotel bed in a room booked under a company name, and when we hung up, I felt hollowed out and lighter at once. I slept for 11 hours. In the morning, a message on the temporary phone. Breakfast is available at the hotel restaurant. Your flight is at 10:45. A driver will take you to the airport at 8:30. And then separately, the account. I need a few more days for the full resolution. Will you allow me to contact you in Manila? I read it twice. He was asking, not assuming, presenting a question and waiting for my answer. I typed, yes. 3 days after I landed in Manila, a bank transfer arrived in an account I'd opened under my own name at a branch I'd walked into alone. The transfer was from a Korean corporate account I didn't recognize. The amount was exact, to the one converted, of what had been in my Korean account on the day I'd met Kwan Ho. Not including the interest he'd drawn from it. Not including the months of my own salary he'd redirected. Just what was mine. Returned. I sat in my sister's kitchen with my laptop open and stared at the number. Then I typed, "How?" His response, he agreed it was better than the alternative. I read that sentence 4 times and understood exactly what it meant and exactly what I would never be told, and found I was entirely fine with that. Park In-soo made his move on a Wednesday. He published nothing. Seon had clearly anticipated and preempted that avenue, because the document Park In-soo apparently tried to circulate to 3 journalists never reached a single one. What he did instead was contact Kwon-ho. I found this out because Kwon-ho called me. He called the temporary phone, which I'd kept, because changing numbers felt like more trouble than it was worth, and I almost didn't answer, and then I did, because I was tired of decisions being made around me without my participation. "I know what you're involved in," Kwon-ho said. "No greeting. I know who Yoon Se-in is." "Then you know more than me," I said, which was technically no longer true. "He's using you," Kwon-ho said, "to clean his image. You're a project." "You took my passport at an airport," I said. "You want me to take relationship advice from you?" Silence. "He's dangerous," Kwon-ho said. And then, with an edge I recognized, the injured performance of a man who lost access to something and has decided this constitutes a wound. "I'm trying to warn you, Kwon-ho," I said. "You and I are finished. Whatever someone told you, whatever they're using you for, you're being used. Think about that." I ended the call. I texted Seon. Kwon-ho called me. Park In-soo reached him. His response, "I know. Are you all right?" I looked at the question. Simple, direct, no performance. "Yes," I typed. "What are you going to do?" "Finish it," he said. "May I come over tonight?"
Yes.
He arrived at 8 with food from a restaurant I'd mentioned once weeks ago in passing, and he'd filed it, and we ate at my kitchen table and talked about ordinary things for a while, which was its own kind of deliberate, a way of reminding both of us that ordinary things were still accessible. Then he told me what he was going to do. Park In-soo has been operating under the assumption that the Busan situation left him with material I'd want suppressed, he said. He's wrong. The material reflects poorly on him, not on me. He simply doesn't know that I know the full picture. He turned his tea glass once, clockwise. Tomorrow morning, Attorney Kim is filing 3 civil suits on behalf of the Lim family against Park In-soo specifically. Not against his company. Against him. For the conduct in the Busan negotiation.
"You've been building this," I said.
"For how long?" "Since Busan," he said. I knew there would be a moment. I waited for him to reveal what he had, so I knew exactly what he was working with. I looked at him. "You waited for him to come at you," I said. "So you'd know the shape of it." "You can't respond to something you can't see," he said. "And me," I said. I was the thing that made him reveal his hand. He held my gaze steadily. "Yes," he said. "I'm sorry for that. I didn't know he'd identify you this quickly."
"Don't apologize," I said.
"I want to understand it. I don't want things happening around me that I'm not part of."
"I know," he said.
"Which is why I'm telling you all of it." I looked at the kitchen table. At the food containers, the tea glasses, the ordinary architecture of a shared evening. "After tomorrow," I said, "Park In-soo is dealt with. He'll have enough of his own problems that I'm no longer a useful target," he said. "And Kwon-ho?" "He was released," he said simply, "when he transferred the bank account correctly. He won't look for another engagement with me." I looked at him. At the specific economy of that sentence, released when he transferred. The gap between those words and what they meant. "You gave him a reason to cooperate," I said. I explained the situation, he said, in terms he could understand. I thought about an airport and a 40-second phone call and a man who returned a passport in 8 minutes. About all the machinery behind those gestures that I'd been allowed to see in outline, but not in full. "I want to ask you something," I said. "Ask." "If I hadn't been in that line," I said. "If it hadn't been Terminal 3, if you hadn't been there, would you have ever—" I stopped. Restarted. "Was this— am I—" "You're not a project," he said. He said it without defensiveness, immediately, like he'd been waiting for that sentence to surface. "I stepped in because a man was holding your documents and you were standing there with nothing. That's the beginning." He held my gaze. Everything after that is different. Everything after that is a choice I kept making because of you. Not because of what you represent. Because of you specifically. The kitchen was quiet. Specifically, I said. How you talked to Kwanho on the phone, he said. You told him he was being used, and you ended the call. That took more presence than most people manage under that kind of pressure. He looked at the table and then back at me. The way you didn't board the flight. I've thought about that a lot. You've been trying to leave for 3 months and you stood at the gate and your body just stopped. Because leaving felt like surrender, not escape. Because you weren't actually free yet.
He paused.
I understand that feeling. I've made peace with more unfinished things than I'd like. I looked at him, at the controlled face and the something underneath it that I was learning to see. The scar, I said. He looked at his forearm. He turned his hand over, the inside of the arm up. Old, he said. How old? 23, he said. I was in a situation I hadn't fully understood. I understood it afterward. I didn't ask more. He didn't offer more. But the air between us had changed in the way of shared weight, both of us holding something, the sharing of it not requiring it to be named. Cian, I said. I'm staying in Seoul, I said. I'm choosing to stay. Not because I don't have options. Because I want to be here. He looked at me. I know, he said. I want you to be here. We stayed at the table until late, talking about smaller things, my translation work, a client I was frustrated with, something he'd read that morning that had interested him, and it was the most ordinary evening and the most significant one because ordinary was the thing I hadn't had in 2 years, and he was the reason I was having it. When he left, he paused at the door. He reached into his jacket and took out a folded document. He set it on the table beside the door. That's the lease renewal, he said. Your building management sent it to my office by mistake. Your previous contact information was routed there. I had it corrected. All your correspondence now goes directly to you. He looked at me. Nothing of yours passes through anything connected to me. It's clean. I picked up the document. My name on it. My address. My lease. You separated it, I said. I separated everything, he said. Your account, your visa status, your lease routing. Nothing is contingent on me. Nothing requires my participation to maintain. He met my eyes. You're free. That's not a condition, it's a baseline. I held the document. If I chose to leave tomorrow, I said. You could, he said. Completely. And you'd be very disappointed, he said. And help you pack. Something broke open in my chest, not painfully, the opposite. The specific release of a thing that has been held tensely for a long time, finally allowed to rest. I'm not leaving, I said. He nodded once. He started to go. Cian. He turned. I crossed the small space of my entryway and I stood in front of him, and I reached up and I took his sunglasses, folded in his shirt pocket, where they lived when he wasn't wearing them, and I held them for a moment. He looked at my hand holding his sunglasses. He looked at my face. I watched you take these off at the airport, I said. Slowly. Like you were making a point. I was, he said. What was the point? He was quiet for a moment. That I was paying full attention, he said. And I wasn't going anywhere. I put the sunglasses back in his pocket. My hand rested there for a moment against his shirt. Good, I said. He covered my hand with his. Briefly. Just that. Then he left. I stood in my entryway with the lease in one hand and the warm memory of his hand over mine, and outside my window sill was lit and enormous and mine, actually mine, documented and clean and contingent on no one, and I thought about a Tuesday morning at an airport, a man with coffee and sunglasses and a 40-second phone call. About all the things that had been taken from me, methodically and quietly, over years. And the one thing that had been given back the same way, my own life, in pieces carefully, by someone who understood that what I needed wasn't rescue. It was the door being opened and someone standing back, and after you. Tell me, what moment in this story would have broken you? Standing at the gate with your boarding pass, and not being able to move. Finding that the transfer was for exactly the right amount. Reading the lease with only your name on it. Tell me in the comments. I'll be reading every one.